You know this rhyme. You've sung it countless times as a child, holding hands in a circle, giggling as everyone tumbles to the ground. Ring around the Rosie, a pocket full of posies, ashes, ashes, we all fall down. Simple, innocent, a children's game passed down through generations. But somewhere along the way, someone told you a different story. Perhaps it was a teacher, a parent, or that friend who always knew the real meaning behind everything. They leaned in close and whispered the dark secret. This wasn't just a children's rhyme. This was a coded memory of the Black Death, a haunting echo of the plague that decimated Europe. The ring was the red rash that appeared on the victim's skin. The posies were flowers people carried to ward off the disease's putrid smell. The ashes referred to cremated bodies. And that final line, "We all fall down," that was death itself, claiming everyone in its path. The story spread like wildfire through classrooms and playgrounds. Parents shared it at dinner tables. Teachers taught it as historical fact. The innocent nursery rhyme transformed into something sinister, a grim reminder that even children's songs could harbor devastating truths. You probably still believe it today. But what if I told you that that entire story is a complete fabrication, a lie so thoroughly embedded in our cultural consciousness that most people accept it without question? The actual truth about Ring Around the Rosie is something so radically different to the story we've been told, you'll be surprised the myth ever became the leading interpretation. The earliest printed version of Ring Around the Rosie appears in Kate Greenaway's 1881 Mother Goose collection. Open this delicate volume, and you enter a world of pastoral innocence. Greenaway, already celebrated across Victorian England for her idyllic portrayals of childhood, filled her pages with watercolour illustrations of rosy-cheeked children in pristine white pinafores and sailor suits, dancing in sun-dappled gardens. The page featuring Ring-a-Ring-a Roses shows exactly what she saw in the rhyme. Children circling a flowering rosebush in an English cottage garden, their faces bright with joy, ribbons streaming from their hair as they play. This was a Victorian childhood idealized. No hint of disease, no shadow of death. The rhyme reads simply, "Ring-a-ring-a roses, a pocket full of posies. Hush, 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 hush. We all tumble down." Greenaway presents it exactly as she understood it from her own youth. A simple game where children fell down laughing, not dying. And this is where the illusion shatters. This publication came a full 200 years after England's last plague outbreak in 1665. Think about that timeline for a moment. We're supposed to believe that children preserved a coded memory of the plague through oral tradition for 2 centuries. Yet not a single written record exists from that entire period. Not one diary entry. Not one folklorist's collection, not one concerned parent's letter warning about children singing plague songs. The silence is deafening. During the actual plague years, people documented everything. Samuel Pepys, the great diarist of the age, wrote by candlelight on June 7th, 1665. "This day, much against my will, I did in Drury Lane see 2 or 3 houses marked with a red cross upon the doors, and Lord have mercy upon us, writ there." By August, his entries grew darker. The people die so that now it seems they are fain to carry the dead to be buried by daylight, the nights not sufficing to do it in. He catalogued the horror in excruciating detail, the death carts rumbling through empty streets at dawn, the mass graves at Aldgate where bodies were stacked like cordwood, the terrified exodus of nobility fleeing to their country estates. On August 31st, he wrote of seeing "a poor wretch carried by, the bellman before him, ringing his bell and crying, 'Bring out your dead.'" Pepys documented everything from the soaring price of coffins to the endless tolling of church bells, from the smell of vinegar used to purify coins to the bonfires lit to cleanse the air. His obsessive recording captured even minute details of how children behaved during the plague, staying indoors, wearing amulets, being rushed past infected houses. Yet in all these thousands of pages of meticulous observation, not once does he mention children singing about roses or falling down. Not once. Daniel Defoe chronicled the horror in equally vivid detail. Medical practitioners recorded every observation, yet somehow, mysteriously, not one of them thought to mention children dancing in circles singing about their impending doom. And here's the icing on the cake. The Library of Congress, after extensive research into historical archives, states bluntly that the plague connection did not begin to appear until the middle of the 20th century, not the 14th century during the Black Death, not the 17th century during the Great Plague, the 1950s and 1960s, the era of drive-in movies and rock and roll. What this means is that the dark interpretation you've been told, the one that seems so perfectly logical, so hauntingly appropriate, is younger than the space program. It's more recent than television. Your grandparents likely never heard this explanation as children because it didn't exist yet. So if the plague connection was nothing more than a modern invention, then how did it come into existence? The actual plague story first appeared in print in 1961 in James Leeser's book, The Plague and the Fire. Leeser wasn't a folklorist or a historian of children's literature. He was a popular novelist, writing about the Great Plague of London and the Great Fire that followed. In one casual paragraph, almost as an afterthought, he mentioned that some people believed Ring Around the Rosie referred to the plague. He provided no evidence, cited no sources, offered no documentation. It was pure speculation, tossed off in a single line. Yet this throwaway comment in a mass-market book would become the genesis of one of the most persistent myths in folklore. From there, it spread with astonishing speed. Within 5 years, the connection appeared in folklore collections. Within a decade, it had become accepted wisdom. Teachers taught it as fact. Parents repeated it to seem knowledgeable. Books presented it as hidden history finally revealed. The myth had achieved something remarkable. It had become more real than reality itself. But the evidence against the plague theory extends far beyond timeline problems. The rhyme itself, when examined closely, refuses to cooperate with the dark narrative. Folklorists have collected dozens of versions from across Europe and America, and here's where things get truly interesting. They don't match the plague story at all. In Greenaway's original 1881 printed version, the children don't sneeze or mention ashes. Instead, they say, "Hush, hush, hush, hush." We all tumble down. No symptoms of disease, no cremation, just children tumbling in play. Some 19th century versions include a second verse where everyone gets back up again, rather problematic if falling down supposedly means death. The word ashes, that seems so central to the plague interpretation, it doesn't appear consistently. Children sang a tissue, mimicking a sneeze, or hush-ah, hush-ah. Or in some American versions, light bread, sweet bread, squat. But myths have a way of collapsing under their own weight. And when you step outside England and listen to the children's voices across Europe, the rhyme tells a very different story, one that leaves the plague theory in ruins. The international versions demolish the plague theory even more thoroughly. Picture a summer evening in 1796 in a Bavarian village. The church bells have just rung vespers, and children gather in the fading light around the ancient elderberry bush that has grown behind the church for generations. They clasp hands, farmers' children with rough homespun sleeves, the minister's daughter in her Sunday dress, saved for special occasions. They begin the familiar chant their grandparents taught them. Ringel, Ringel, Reihe, sind der Kinderdreihe, sitzen unterm Hollerbusch, machen alle husch, husch, husch. The words paint a scene of pure innocence. Ring, ring, row. There are 3 children, sitting under the elder bush. Everyone goes swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At that final hush, they don't fall down dead. They scatter like birds, startled from the elderberry branches, laughing and shrieking with delight as they run in all directions before reforming their circle to play again. The elderbush itself held significance in German folklore as a protector against evil spirits, making this a game of safety and joy, not death and disease. Travel to Venice in 1874, and you'd find children playing in the narrow streets between the canals, their voices echoing off ancient stone walls as they sang Gira, Gira, Rosa. Circle, circle, rose. The Venetian children would dance around one girl chosen as the rose, and when the song ended, instead of falling down dead, each child would give her a kiss on the cheek. In the Netherlands, children sang about roses and May wreaths, celebrating spring's arrival. The Swiss danced around actual rose bushes planted in village squares, their game a celebration of the flowering season. These weren't separate rhymes that happened to sound similar. They were all part of the same tradition of circle games that spread across Europe, each region adding its own local flavour. None of them were about plague. Steve Roud, one of England's most respected folklorists, calls the plague attribution complete nonsense. The Opis, who compiled the definitive dictionary of nursery rhymes, reject it entirely. Every serious scholar who has examined the evidence reaches the same conclusion. The plague story is what academics call meta-folklore, folklore about folklore, a modern myth wrapped around an ancient rhyme. So what was Ring Around the Rosie actually about? The answer is both simpler and more profound than any dark conspiracy. The rhyme was a courtship game, and to understand it, you need to picture the social world of 19th century America and England. Imagine a church social in 1883 New England. The Methodist congregation has strict rules against dancing. The minister preaches that dancing leads to moral corruption and unseemly physical contact between unmarried young people. But the youth have found their loophole. On the village green, after Sunday service, they gather for play party games, technically not dancing, though everyone can see the couples stealing glances at each other. The young people form a circle, and pretty Mary Chapman, the blacksmith's daughter, stands in the centre as the Rosie. She's 16, with auburn hair braided and pinned up for the first time this month, a sign she's of courting age. The boys and girls clasp hands and begin circling her, singing the familiar words. William, the miller's son, can barely take his eyes off her as they rotate. When they reach, we all fall down. Everyone drops to the grass, but William, whether by design or genuine distraction, is deliberately the last to fall. The group erupts in knowing laughter and teasing shouts. Now he must pay the forfeit according to the game's ancient rules, confess who he wishes to court. His face flushes crimson as he mumbles Mary's name, barely audible. She smiles, trying to look surprised, though everyone saw this coming, and takes his place in the centre while he joins the circle, positioned now directly across from her, where their eyes can meet with each rotation. The forensic evidence from contemporary accounts confirms this innocent origin. An 1883 description from William Wells Newell's Games and Songs of American Children explains that children would dance around a rose tree in the centre, bowing and playing at courtship. The posies weren't protection against disease. They were the small bouquets young men would give to young women they admired. The falling down was a playful tumble, often followed by elaborate forfeit games, where the last to fall would have to kiss someone or reveal their sweetheart's name. Jessie Wilcox, Smith's famous 1912 illustration in The Little Mother Goose, shows exactly this scene. Children in their Sunday best, holding hands in a sunny meadow dotted with wildflowers, playing a simple game. No darkness, no hidden horror, just children being children. So, at its core, Ring Around the Rosie wasn't about pestilence or mass death at all. It was about play, flirtation, and the rituals of youth. But if the truth is so ordinary, then why does the plague myth cling so stubbornly to the rhyme? The plague myth, despite being thoroughly debunked by scholars, refuses to die because humans love dark stories. We tend to cling to fear over fact, and in doing so, give the myth more power than the truth ever had. Hollywood embraced it with enthusiasm, transforming an innocent children's game into nightmare fuel. In A Nightmare on Elm Street, Three Dream Warriors, 1987, the rhyme becomes a death chant. Ghostly children in white gowns skip rope in slow motion, their voices distorted and echoing as they sing Ring Around the Rosie, while Freddy Krueger stalks his teenage victims through their dreams. The familiar playground melody drops an octave, becoming a funeral dirge. Each line syncs with another death, pocket full of posies, as he fills a victim's lungs with flowers. Ashes, ashes, as someone burns alive. We all fall down as bodies drop from buildings. The horror video game Dead Space 2 features a particularly chilling scene where you enter a nursery on a space station to find dismembered bodies arranged in a circle. A child's voice, crackling through damaged speakers, endlessly loops a slowed-down version of Ring Around the Rosie, the tempo dragged out until each word sounds like a death rattle. Players report having to mute their games to get through the section. During the 2020 pandemic, news articles jokingly called it the ideal hand-washing song, keeping the dark association alive. Social media exploded with memes about the prophetic nursery rhyme, as if children centuries ago had somehow predicted COVID-19. The myth persists because we want it to be true. There's something irresistibly compelling about the idea that innocent children's rhymes harbor dark secrets. It makes us feel like sophisticated insiders who can decode hidden meanings that others miss. It transforms a simple nursery rhyme into a historical artifact, a survivor's tale, a whispered warning from the past. The real Ring Around the Rosie never encoded plague memories because there was nothing to encode. The children who sang it in the 1800s were celebrating spring, playing at romance, tumbling in the grass on sunny afternoons. This modern myth-making reveals something profound about how folklore actually works. Real folklore develops organically over centuries, shaped by countless voices and cultural needs. But fake folklore, metafolklore, can be manufactured almost instantly in the modern age. One person's speculation becomes another's interesting theory, which becomes another's accepted fact. Within a generation, the fabrication becomes so embedded that challenging it seems like denying history itself. The transformation happened with breathtaking speed. In 1961, Lisa's casual speculation. By 1966, it appeared in folklore journals as a possible interpretation. By 1975, encyclopedias listed it as one theory. By 1985, teachers' guides presented it as historical fact. Today, type Ring Around the Rosie meaning into any search engine, and the plague interpretation dominates, despite every serious folklorist calling it nonsense. The scholars who study these rhymes professionally, the ones who spend their careers tracing origins through historical documents, all agree. The plague story is pure invention. As one Library of Congress specialist puts it, most folklorists consider the plague connection apocryphal. That's academic speak for completely made up. Yet the myth has achieved immortality that truth can't kill. The most chilling aspect isn't that Ring Around the Rosie contains a dark secret. It's that we collectively created a dark secret that never existed, believed it so thoroughly that it replaced reality, and now can't let it go. The story we've wrapped around this innocent children's game reveals something genuinely unsettling about our need to find darkness where none exists, to transform innocence into horror.